Welcome to Historiespanerna History Reconnaissance, and this is how the US supplied an ocean war. World War II in the Pacific was fought in the air and in the sea. Then, invading or bypassing islands, or it was called island hopping. But behind it all was logistics, the ability to supply fleets and armies over the vast distances of the Pacific. In June and July 1944, the ability for the United States to supply and maintain an invasion force was put to the ultimate test. Operation Forager, the invasion of the Mariana Islands. The Marianas, that is Saipan, Tinian and Guam, had actually been under Japanese control since after World War I. Now, they were a key part of what Japan called the Absolute National Defense Zone. And please, if you like this content, why not subscribe to our channel and join us on our continuing journey in history. One of the biggest challenges behind the invasion wasn't the fighting, it was logistics. Simply put, there weren't enough ships. A staff study estimated that maintaining the force would require 120 cargo ships and 58 troop transports, but by April 1944, only a small portion of those were actually available. For the invasion of Saipan, the US managed to assemble around 110 transport vessels, including attack transports, cargo ships, landing ships, and high-speed transports. Together, they carried nearly 75,000 tons of cargo, an enormous effort, but still not enough to meet every need. Adding to the complexity, troops were spread across multiple Hawaiian islands while preparing to depart. The 2nd Marine Division loaded on Hawaii, the 4th Marine Division on Maui, and the 27th Infantry Division on Oahu. Coordinating all this across such long distances made the operation even more difficult. To prepare for combat, planners used a method called combat landing, where the most critical supplies were packed for immediate access during landing. But because of the shortage of ships, this wasn't always possible. Some units were forced to travel separately from their equipment, something extremely risky in a combat zone. Fueling the fleet was a massive operation during an invasion. Fleet oilers, organized into 8 groups, continuously supplied ships at sea, delivering about 100,000 barrels of fuel per day. Ships would leave their task groups to rendezvous in designated refueling zones across the open ocean, then return to duty once topped up. In the end, the invasion wasn't just a test of military strengths, it was a massive logistical challenge. Victory depended not only on strategy and firepower, but on whether enough men, equipment and supplies could even make it to the battlefield in the first place. Supplying food and water for the invasion was another major logistical challenge. Different forces were supplied from different regions, some from New Zealand, others from Hawaii and from the US West Coast. Once the operation began, most resupply had to come directly from the United States, since bases in Hawaii couldn't handle the massive demand. Fresh food was especially difficult to manage. It relied on refrigerated cargo ships, known as reefers, which were in short supply. Even when available, many weren't designed for efficient unloading, and key locations like Saipan initially lacked proper storage facilities. Despite these challenges, supply forces still managed to deliver fresh foods to ships most days, though troops on land received it far less frequently. Water was another critical concern. Until reliable sources were secured on land, larger ships had to supply smaller vessels, but this system was strained, especially when ships began leaving or bad weather interfered. Troops brought large reserves with them, and engineers used distillation units to produce more water. Capturing local wells also became vital, helping provide steady daily supplies. Ammunition was one of the hardest supply to manage, since usage in combat was unpredictable, but it still had to be planned months in advance. Specialized ammunition ships delivered and restocked warships from key bases like Eniwetok. Because there were too few of these ships, others, including lander ships and even cargo vessels, were used to transport ammunition. Some merchant ships were loaded in a new way that allowed specific types of ammunition to be quickly accessed without unloading everything else. Each transport division consisted of 4 attack transports and an attack cargo ship. Each transport carried up to 1,500 troops, so a transport division could carry a regimental combat team. The landings in the Marianas required landing vehicles tracked, LVTs, to carry troops across the reefs. Their value had been demonstrated in the Battle of Tarawa. They were carried in a landing ship tank. The LVTs were able to cross the reef and disembark their troops on the beach. Medical support was a major part of the operation. Supplies were carried on general ships, while 4 hospital ships treated the wounded. Additional transports and even modified landing ships were used to handle casualties, especially during the early stages of the invasion. Thousands of wounded soldiers were evacuated by sea to hospitals on nearby islands, with ships constantly moving patients between combat zones and medical facilities. Air evacuation also played a key role, with hundreds of casualties flown out from Saipan to safer locations. After the invasions, Seabees quickly turned captured islands into key bases. On Saipan, they repaired and expanded a Slitu airfield within days of its capture, allowing U.S. fighter squadrons to begin operations almost immediately. The airfield was later renamed Islay Field. On Tinian, large construction forces built major air bases, Northfield and Westfield, designed to handle B-29 bombers, requiring longer and wider runways than the original Japanese ones. On Guam, the island was transformed into a major supply, naval and air hub, eventually becoming Admiral Nimitz' headquarters. Construction units arrived with the invasion and continued building up the island in the months that followed. These rapid construction efforts were crucial in turning captured territory into operational bases for the rest of the war.
That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.